Zayin. This is right after the story of the Baal Peor, and 24,000 Jews die in a plague. V'yidaber Hashem Moshe lemor, Tzorores HaMidyanim, v'hikisim osam. I'm not sure how the Art Scroll interprets the word soror. Mark, how does he interpret soror?
If I could just show you, you went a little quick. What is the number that you just, it's Chofei?
Perek Chofei, Pasuk Tez Zayin.
Okay.
Chapter 25, verse 16.
Right, okay, so Hashem spoke to Moses, harass the Midianites.
Harass. Tzororis HaMidyanim. Tzororis HaMidyanim v'kisim osam. And you should smite them. So Rashi says, Loshen hava aleichem la'ayiv osam. Meaning you should perceive them in a way as if they're the arch enemy. Meaning when you go to war with the Midianites, it's not you're just going to war with understanding they're an enemy. You have to depict them and internalize the reality that these are the arch enemies. That's the mindset that you're going to war against them. So first you have to have this negative perception in terms of what they are, and then you smite them. It's interesting, there's a question in terms of how to count the mitzvah of remembering Amalek and destroying them. The Torah says, Zocha is asher osulcha Amalek. Positive commandment. Before the Shabbos before Purim, we read Parsha Zochar in the Torah. The portion which speaks about how Amalek attacked us when we were on the way, and they were a wandering band, they didn't believe in God, so on and so forth. Remember what they did to us. And then it says you should smite them. You should remove them, obliterate them from under the heavens. So there's a question, why must you remember? Is it two separate mitzvahs? There's a mitzvah Zachor and there's a mitzvah Mechis Amalek. Remember and then destroy them. Or it's one mitzvah. The mitzvah is to remember to destroy. The reason why you must remember them, because if you forget what they did to you, then you're not going to have that negative feeling, intolerant mindset to be able to tolerate their existence. So the remembering of what they did to you is to destroy them. That's the purpose of Zohar. The Zohar is to destroy. So the discussion is, a woman who is not conscripted into the army, according to the Torah, does a woman have an obligation to remember what Amalek had done to us? Because if the Zohar is only to destroy them, and since the woman has no obligation to destroy Amalek, she has no mitzvah to remember what they did to us. It's a discussion among the commentators and the codifiers. It's something similar here. Tzororis HaMidyanim. You should see them as the arch enemy, meaning you should harass them. Also similar because of what they did to us. Because of what happened with the Baal Peor and the women, we were nearly annihilated. If not for Pinchas's zealotry, the Jewish people would have been destroyed. So what do these people represent? They represent something that their intention was that we should be annihilated. That's who they are. As a result of remembering that, you have to keep that in mind, and you have to deal with them in the most negative way, even before you destroy them, because if you don't see them in that negative light, you're not going to destroy them properly, with the proper intent. Kitzorahim lochem, b'nichleim asher nichlu lochem, because they plotted negatively against you with all their machinations. Al Dvar Por, with the Baal Peor, with the idol of Baal Peor. Al Dvar Kozbi Bas Nisi Midjan Achosa Mamuka Biyom Amagefa, and the issue of Cosby. She was the Midianite princess who was smitten on the day of the plague, al Dvar Por, during the issue of the Balpor. Meaning, understand to what degree they wanted to destroy you, that they were willing to offer their daughters to you. Even the princess should be defied, violated, for the sake of destroying the Jewish people. They were even willing to give their best to destroy the Jewish people. Rashi, Shefkiru b'noseim l'snus, they allowed their daughters to be given for licentiousness, kedei latos ma'achapor, to mislead them, to draw them into Balpor. As the Midrash says, they were beautiful women, they seduced the men, and the men couldn't control themselves when they got to that point, and they wanted to engage with the women sexually, and the woman would not allow the man to engage with her unless he first worshipped the idol Por. She would pull out the idol from her pocket and say, not until you worship this, and only then I will allow myself to be available to you. There's Moab, Lotzivel Hashmid. But Moab, even though the Moabite women were involved, but the Moabites were not, the order was not given to destroy them. They Rus HaMovia, Rus, because of Rus, because Rus, who was meant to descend from them, as the Gemara tells us, because if Moab would have been destroyed, the women would have been destroyed, and there would have been a Rus. And if there wouldn't have been a Rus, there wouldn't have been a David HaMelech. So since there had to be a Rus, who would be the grandmother of David, therefore Moab couldn't be destroyed because of Rus. You understand? Now, Rus herself, there was a king, we read in prophets, his name was Eglon Melech Moab. Eglon, the king of Moab. He was, when we read the story of Rus, that Rus and Orpah, these were the two Moabite princesses who married the sons of Naomi, of Elimelech. Rus was one of them. She was a princess, and ultimately she came back with Naomi. She converted. She married Boaz, who was one of the princes of Judah, and he was the grandfather, and she was the grandmother of David HaMelech. So if Moab would have been destroyed, although they deserved to be destroyed, no less than the Midianites, there wouldn't have been a Rus. So Moab was saved because of Rus. Okay? The Gemara tells us, why did Moab merit to have such a descendant coming from them? So the Gemara tells us in two locations, Balak, the king of Moab, was the grandfather of Rus. He himself was the grandfather of Rus. And why did he merit to have such a special granddaughter? Because Bilam had told him that the only way he's able to curse the Jews is if he builds these altars and he brings sacrifices on the altars to Hashem. Balak himself was a pagan. Except due to the instruction of Bilam, he brought sacrifices to Hashem. But why did he bring those sacrifices to Hashem? Because he believed that's the only way God would be agreeable to have his people cursed. That's why. He didn't bring the sacrifices because, in essence, he believed in God and he was negated to God. It was because he had an ulterior motive. This is the ultimate level of Shlo Lishma. So Rava learns, where do we learn the law of Bitoch Shlo Shma Bo Lishma? That even if you do something with an ulterior motive that has value, because ultimately it could bring to a level of doing it for the right reason, we learned it from Balak. Because why did Balak merit to have such a special granddaughter as Rus? Because he had brought the Karbanos for Hashem, which was not what he normally would do. Normally it was paganism. So in the merit of bringing those Karbanos, that's why he merited to have such a special granddaughter. Why was Moab saved and not destroyed? Although they should have been destroyed no less than Midian, because there had to be a Rus born from Moab. That's the reason why Moab was not destroyed. And why did Moab merit to have Rus? Because Balak had done something special. Bring the korbanos. So it's very interesting. Balak initially was concerned that he'd be, through the various things, the Jews coming, they would plunder him, they would pillage him, because the Jews were not permitted to destroy Moab. But Balak took up the fight on behalf of the Canaanites after seeing that Og and Sichon were destroyed, and he enlisted Bilam to curse the Jews. And the Midrash tells us that Balak despised the Jews almost as much as Bilam despised the Jews. Nevertheless, in the process of trying to destroy us, he merited something, he did something which had this infinite value. That the reward was that he had Rus as a granddaughter. And because of that, the whole Moabite nation was saved. So it's interesting. He was concerned about the Moabite nation. And it turned out not only were the Moab saved because of what he wanted to curse us, because through the process he brought the Karbanos, he merited to have Rus. That's why they were saved. Because if they would have been destroyed, there wouldn't have been a Rus. So from this is the ultimate it seems to be, if there had to be a David HaMelech, there would have been a Rus. The Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh writes in the portion of Eish Sifas Toar that if a person goes to war and he sees a woman that he's attracted to, a non-Jewish woman, he's permitted to take her, and there's a whole process. Well, ultimately, whether he marries her or whether he doesn't marry her. What is the whole idea? And the Torah tells us that even if she's not, and all the people go to war are tzaddikim. But if they're attracted to the woman, even if she's a married woman, married to a non-Jew, he's permitted to take her. According to most Rishonim, even engage with her sexually before he converts her. He brings her back, and there's a process that within 30 days, if after 30 days he decides he wants to take her as a wife, he converts her and he marries her. But what's going on over here? So the Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh explains, based on the Zohar, that at the time of the Chet of Adam Rishon, when Adam ate of the tree of knowledge, and evil was introduced into existence, Satan had captured a number of very special souls. And these souls are in captivity. And only during certain times could they be released from his clutches and could be converted to become part of Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people. Rus herself, her soul, was one of those most special souls. And the whole story of Machle and Chilion, when they went to the plains of Moab, and so on and so forth, that was the beginning of the process of what? Of Rus being released from the clutches of Satan, and ultimately, because she wanted to come back, she converted, and she became the wife of Boaz, who ultimately, they were the grandparents of David HaMelech. But only because she had that special soul did she convert in that way she did, and David was born from that soul. And all the souls, all these women that are taken in captivity, even they're ugly, whatever it is, even though these people are tzaddikim, but if there's some kind of attraction to them, we're not talking about it's just a sexual attraction. There's an attraction. If they're attracted, and despite the process where she's put into a situation where she's unkempt, and despite all that, he's still attracted to her, that's a confirmation that she has that special soul, and therefore he converts her and he marries her. But those souls that ultimately within the portion of the woman taken in captivity, those souls are those special souls. And Rus was the ultimate of those souls, and therefore she was the mother of David. And why did Balak merit to be the grandfather of Rus? Because he did something exceptional. Being a pagan king, he brought karbonos to Hashem, and because of that, he merited to have Rus as his granddaughter. So the question I asked always was, if Rus was meant to be born, let's say Boaz wouldn't have done what he did, Balak, if he wouldn't have done what he did, Rus would have been born. She would have been born into existence. Because the Rechaim HaKadosh writes in Parshas Tazria that when a person, the Gemara tells us that the soul enters into the child at the time of conception. That's when it happens. There are many souls that could enter into that child. Every person has many souls that are available to enter into that child. It's based on the merit of the father and mother, which one of those souls are going to enter into that child. As a result of this, Balak didn't have to be the grandfather of Rus. Rus could have been drawn into somebody else's, another Gentile's child. It didn't have to be into Balak's child. So why did Balak merit that he should be able to draw that special soul, known as Rus, into, at the time of his conception of his child? It's because he had built the altars and brought karbanos to Hashem, and that merit, although it was with this negative intent to destroy the Jewish people, the takeaway is Rava says, Mitoch Shloshma Bodishma. That's why he merited to bring the soul that it should be brought into his child, not into somebody else's child. So this Shlo Lishma, not only did he merit to have such a grandchild, daughter, the reason why the Moabite nation continued to exist is only because of his action that he did, because they were not destroyed, because there had to be a Rus who was going to be born into existence.